Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Old School From Home Q&A, or the Modcast, as some people like to call it. So, yeah, I'm your host for this week, Mod Rock, and joining me is Mod Swing.
Hello.
Mod Kieran.
Hello, hello.
And Mod Arcane.
Hi.
For those of you who didn't get to tune in last week, Mod Arcane is our brand new junior content developer for the Old School team. Right, so how's everyone been? Swing, if you want to kick us off.
Well, I'm good. I'm really tired, man. We had the 1v1 tournament. Been a busy week as well, generally. So I've not really had the time to take the time owed in lieu back from the tournament just yet. A couple of hours here, a couple of hours there. So I'm really sleepy. Other than that, I'm good. I've been trying to make sure I'm kind of going out, stretching my legs, getting a bit of sunshine.
What about you, Kieran?
I'm alright. I mean, I wasn't up late over the weekend for 1v1 tournament, but yeah, I've been tired the last couple of days. To be honest, I've been more tired working at home than I am normally in the office. I don't know why, whether it's just the fact you're on video calls all day rather than in meetings where you're wondering about the office and whatnot, but, besides that, going fine. Fortunate to even be working, so, can't complain
sure it's
too
not
much.
because you can see your bed from your desk, so it's calling to you?
Well, maybe that as well. My bed is literally just behind me, so,
And what about you, Mod Arcane?
Yeah, I'm great. I think I've got this down pretty much. I vary everything quite a lot and try to reset myself between working and relaxing. And it's quite easy to be happy when you wake up and are on Zoom calls with Kieran for 4 hours a day,
Ah, yes, development training.
How has it been, Arcane, starting to work at a company from home and not even being, in the office?
I was quite anxious about it. I thought it was going to go a lot worse than it did, but I've been pleasantly surprised. It's been going really, really smoothly and I'm having a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
Well, fun's always good to hear. Yeah, I myself was like Sween, working on the 1v1s over the weekend, so putting in all that extra time and not really catching up on sleep, but no pain, no gain, right? So other than me and Sween working on the 1v1s, is there anything special you guys got up to over the weekend? From what you can?
I'll kick it off. I'm nearly maxed on Old School, and I get to brag and flex about that now, so gonna take the opportunity. I'm not quite maxed yet. I've only got smithing left, and I'm hoping to max this weekend, so I have hit it.
Maxes, am I right?
Yeah, I know. I've hit it hard the last few months, though. I've went so hard. And I left all the easy skills to the end, so it's been super fast.
So what you're telling us is you've been working from home.
Mate, I'll tell you right now, right? As tempting as it is to do things while you're at work, I have never played at work. I cannot do it. I want to focus on the job and that aspect. And I know it detracts from it, because I cannot just AFK. I've got to pay attention to it.
What about you, Arcane?
Yeah, my weekend was good. I played RuneScape for all of it. Yeah.
Pretty much it.
I mean, beyond just Rooney, I've done a bunch of social things with friends, doing games together in the evenings and things like that, where we're all just on a big Discord video call and stuff like that has been the only thing sort of really given me, it's a really good reason to just keep going, because that's where the fun comes from.
Ironically, I think I've found I've probably played more single-player games since I've been working from home than I ever have. Right, so we've got a few chat commands in the chat today. As I mentioned, Mod Arcane being our new mod, so if you hit !new mod in the chat, you'll be able to find out some extra info. If you'd like to submit questions for future Q&As, the !questions will take you a link to a form to fill in. And for those of you that haven't seen it yet, a dev blog for Deadman mode should have just gone live. If you hit !DMM, then you'll be able to find out all the information there. And speaking of Deadman mode, we've got a small section to answer a few questions about it. And the first one is will there be a beta, and how can I participate? Mod Swing.
Firstly, we're calling it DMM, not Deadman, because with the current climate, we thought it's probably best to call it DMM, make it nicer, softer sounding name. So DMM blog. Will there be a beta? Yes, there will be. Friday at 1 PM BST. Google time zone converter. But if you're in London or England or like the UK, it's going to be 1 PM. We use log into the beta world.
Yeah, there's no restrictions. Anyone can join until we hit the player cap for the world. There's normally about a 15-20 minute preamble for players to get themselves ready, or some people just like to go mental, have a bit of extra PKing before the countdown starts and the finals begin. So just pretty much whatever you see on the last Deadman we did about a year ago. This is our way of making sure everything runs as smoothly as possible before we actually get to the event. It's a lot easier to get 2,000 of you guys to come and help us than it is to try and get 2,000 accounts to run simultaneously in the office. Yeah,
and Rock, just to clarify to the players who are watching what the beta actually entails. So obviously, DMM, usually it lasts for weeks or for months, but what we really focus on is the very last, the last hour and a half or so of the event. So, the stuff where historically things have gone wrong, when we start sending in deadly fog to try and kill people, and when we send people to final areas, and then we teleport them en masse, hopefully teleport them en masse and not instantly kill them, and then they go to the arenas where they fight, and again, hopefully deadly fog doesn't enter the arena and kill people as it has done previously. So you'll log in, you'll be given the same gear, everyone has the same gear, same loadouts and that kind of stuff. You'll be assigned one of two final areas, Anakar, so Greater Demons, or just north of Falador, one of those two. And then gradually, I think it's about 5-minute periods, correct me if I'm wrong, fog will slowly start to envelop different areas of the map. If you get caught within those areas, you get killed, and then you log down. The idea is you're being shuttled into those two final areas where you'll be forced to fight and survive. And when the last 128 players per area, so 256 in total, assuming we get that many in the beta, you'll be teleported into the arena where there'll be a series of one-on-one fights until one person wins. But because it's beta, you don't win anything, but it's really good fun.
Yeah, I think we've had a single player that's won 3 different betas, and it's like you finish the beta and congratulations, you've won absolutely nothing.
Does it still come out with the chat messages in game saying you're about to win this much money as well?
I think so, and we can still fire off the confetti and everything else, yeah.
Nice. It's good though, because it's good fun and lets us verify it's going to work at the same time. It's been a long time since we've ran a Deadman, nearly a year, so a lot of changes have happened to the game, and it's a really good chance to verify it's still going to go ahead as we hope.
Modcast, have you participated in any of the Deadmans or watched some of them in the previous?
I've watched quite a few, but I've never participated. I've always had too many gains to make in the main game to feel like I can break away from it.
Now's the perfect chance to hone your PKing skills against the players.
For sure.
Right, so the next question is, what are the prizes for the Deadman tournament? The DMM tournament. I need to get used to that.
Okay, so a while back, 2 weeks ago I think, we announced all of the cool initiatives we're doing to support our mental health charity partners. It's a really challenging time. Of that, we said we'd give an extra, in addition to the amount we usually give, £100,000 to charities. £25,000 of that is coming in the form of aligning and accompanying Deadman. So one of the prizes is we're giving £25,000 to charity, but obviously the players who are competing in DMM will want to win some prizes too. And there are some prizes. We're working with Intel and Razer, who are providing some hardware prizes. So forgive me for looking slightly to the side. I'm reading the dev blog right now. First place gets $1,000 US, the Razer Ultimate Bundle, an Intel i9 CPU, an Intel swag bag, and a year of old school membership. The runner-up gets $500 US, a Razer Black Widow Elite, an Intel SSD, an Intel swag bag, and a year of old school membership. The semi-finalists, because obviously in Deadman and DMM we can't differentiate between third place and fourth place, So both semi-finalists will get $250 US, a Razor Kraken Ultimate and Base Station Chroma, or it's your choice of a Viper Ultimate and Gigantus Team Razor, and a year of old school membership. And then the players who fall into 5th and 16th place, so all of those kind of quarterfinalists and last 16 finalists, will also get a year membership.
Awesome. I want to know where I can go win a 9-9. Right, next question is, can we swap in this DMM tournament?
Yeah, so again, to point to the blog, we have clarified that we're not going to be enforcing rules against swapping. So there's a section in the blog, !DMM, called What's Changed Since the Last Seasonal, where we've kind of explained why we've made the decisions we're making. So we aren't going to be enforcing rules against swapping or muling, actually, I'll get onto that as well. So in the past, rules were rather vague and were often prone to misinterpretation. Some players argue that swapping was actually a way of evening the playing field when playing against clans or players, like popular players, who might be given lots of free stuff by the communities, like content creators. So what we're doing is we're going to see how this change affects gameplay for future reference. You know, should DMM come back as a permanent fixture, which isn't confirmed, could happen, we don't know yet. We'll see how this goes. And part of that, we'll see how swapping and allowing swapping and muling plays a part.
Yeah, I think what's important with all these initiatives is that we put these out now, and like things like something new like the 1v1 tournament, is we're kind of in the perfect position to kind of see what would happen and kind of gain that extra information so that we can kind of direct where we want to go with these kind of initiatives in the future. So jumping in, playing out, giving your feedback will always help us in trying to make these better and try and do more of them in the future, because I know quite a few of us in the team love it when a dead man comes around and we get to see all this massive hype on the social media and the streams and YouTube and everything else. So yeah, do jump in, and remember !DMM will take you to the dev blog and give you all the information you need.
I do think that this DMM tournament is going to be absolutely nuts. Do you guys think the same? Because it's been a year, everyone's built up for it. Obviously, everyone for the most part is stuck at home, and it's such a good thing to get into and play so hard for 4 weeks and see what happens. I can't wait to see what happens. It's going to be a thrill.
I'm really looking forward to. So even though there aren't really any like notable, sexy changes that we've kind of tried to do historically, you know the kind of changes where we've added stuff like PvP armors and PvP weapons and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't have any really big highlights like that. But even changing the structure, if I can quickly talk about that. So previously we've had like the seasonal, which is like 4 to 6 weeks, I think usually around when players are qualifying. And there's a big gap, a big lull, and then there's a week-long finals. And in that finals, players have to start fresh, and that was the whole thing. What we're doing is we're condensing it into one kind of compact format, which is going to last between 1st of May and the 30th of May, where between the 1st and the 28th you can play. Then there's only like a day and a half where that's technically the lull in the period. We'll flag the top 2,000 accounts for access to the actual Deadman final, you know, playing the Permadeath stage and have a chance of winning the prizes. But most importantly, they keep the progress they had. So there's no more regrinding. It's just nice, compact. You've got a month to build your account. Hopefully the extra time will allow people to kind of, you know, refine their builds, get better equipment to make it a bit more exciting, and maybe even spend more time playing rather than worrying about, you know, qualifying and then scraping in the final week to get enough Barrows gear to survive for a longer period.
I think that final week was always absolutely nuts for those players, wasn't it? How hard you had to go to make sure you had all the combat stats you needed and all the equipment and everything else. That even just dying once in that final week was such a humongous setback. That in this format, I think it works better. It gives the season, like, if you could even call the first 3 weeks like a mini season sort of thing, that those 3 weeks now serve a much stronger purpose than merely qualifying. So I think actually this is probably a better format overall, at least from my point of view.
And just to confirm, can we clarify what the qualification rules are and how you make it into the top 2K?
It's according to so pretty much what we've done in the past, where the top 2,000 in the tournament HiScores will be there for access. We'll do the usual checks, so even though we're allowing stuff like muling and swapping, the usual rules of RuneScape do apply. If you macro, you'll be banned and disqualified consequently, and we will rigorously enforce stuff like account sharing. If you account share, you'll be disqualified as well. And then we'll look to kind of top up the 2k with anybody. We'll look at the number of disqualified, and then we'll top up the 2k based upon that.
Awesome. A general question for everyone here. Start with you, Arcane. What are you looking forward to seeing this tournament? Do you have any predictions or anything like that?
I'm kind of a fan of Manked. I've always tried to follow him throughout the DMM progress. So I'm hoping that he gets quite far again. I can see him in the final cut.
Yourself, Kieran?
Oh, I don't know. For me, I just love watching the final. That final with all the 1v1 start, and at that point, anyone can win it, right? That's my favourite part of watching it, and that's what I can't wait to see.
So hype.
What about you, Sween?
It really depends who plays it. I mean, we had the 1v1 tournament where everyone's on an equal level, equal playing field in terms of gear and stuff. We try to equalise it as much as possible when it comes to things like latency and ping by allowing different regional qualifiers. Whereas, the DMM finals can be played on the one world, which is World 400. Some players will have better ping, so there's an advantage there. We spoke about the reasons why we're allowing swapping to kind of maybe level the playing field for clans and content creators. But those advantages do still exist, so it depends what teams, what clans, what content creators play this tournament, and ultimately how much they rely on the resources and equipment being given to them. I think Arcane's suggestion of someone like Manx, who historically has had big teams behind him, is a really good shout. I don't know if I've not really heard of anyone like Fools who've been pretty dominant in previous Deadmans, if they're coming back or not. I just look forward to see what happens, and really, really hoping nothing goes wrong.
I think we all hope that. For me, it's kind of like the plethora of PvP content we get out coming through YouTube. During a Deadman finale and stuff like that, people will do daily videos. Now we might see videos every few days or videos every week. And kind of like those best bits compilations that people put out. So you get to see some of those juicy PKs and the keys that they loot from people and things like that. That was always fun for me to watch.
I tell you what, I reckon what'll happen is Matt K will win, because that's what's going to be on Reddit at the end, right? That's what we're going to see going around on Twitter. It's the clip of Matt K winning the tournament.
God damn it.
Right,
we move on to that, man. Can I quickly run through some other kind of notable stuff?
Yeah, be my guest.
So I just want to go through the main changes since the last seasonal. I encourage everyone to go and read it themselves, !DMM, keep banging on about it. But notable stuff that's changed. We talked about the structure, how it's condensed. We spoke about not enforcing rules like muling and swapping, but two more things I want to cover is there'll be no XP cap. So XP gain will be uncapped. You get as much XP as you can. So initially we introduced it to try and ensure a bit of parity, to encourage newer players to come and play it, maybe part way through the season. Maybe they play on launch, take a break, come back. We didn't want them to be too far behind. That didn't really happen. We looked at data every single time to see if it had an effect. It did not. What we saw, I think we implemented it something like 4 or 5 seasons before the very last one, and then what we ended up doing was just increasing the cap quite significantly each time. It didn't work, so we decided to get rid of it. We're just going to see how it goes. If should the DMM come back permanently in the future, this would be a good experiment to decide whether or not there should be an XP cap. And then lastly, we aren't restricting Chambers of Zerek and Theatre of Blood. Again, if we're being honest, it's just an experiment. Will it massively affect DMM? Will it be a good effect? Will it be a bad effect? That's really good reference for the future.
I think that brings another element, because you might end up seeing a few more PVMers jump into the game to get the twisted bows and things like that to get more gear for people. So you'll probably end up seeing that a large majority of the 256 have got ridiculous gear and are just running around shredding everyone. Right. I am a little bit wary that we've spent 20 minutes talking about PvP, but there is a little bit of small section that I'd like to go over about the 1v1s. Obviously, that happened this weekend. Congratulations to I'm So Happy Right Now, who claimed the grand prize. I'm going to jump to you, Arcane, first. What did you think of the 1v1 tournament? And what do you think you would suggest for future tournaments if we were to hold them?
I thought it went really well from a viewer's perspective. I'm not a big PvPer, so from like my persona kind of a perspective, I thought it was enjoyable all around. I would like to see a double elimination. I think it adds a much more competitive flair and lets you have like an underdog come back after losing a potential big match. From all of the competitive games that I've been watching someone climb up through the first loss of a single or a double elim tournament is really exciting, and I think that we could really benefit from that, although there are some complications with time zones, etc. But it would be really cool.
What about you, Kieran?
Honestly, the first thing I want to say is I'm just so hyped how well it went. You know, given we did this entirely online, we weren't even in the studio for running obviously the grand final stream, and we used the community. We had people in the community doing the casting for the prior regional rounds. Like, how smoothly it all went blew me away. I think the setup of doing regional stuff, which we've not done before in that way, worked really well. And obviously the finals, we even did the way the world stuff worked, which we did one in the sort of home country, one in the away country for each of the two competitors, worked really well. I think the one thing I'd like to say is seed the finals bracket based off the results of the regionals. I think that would have helped rather than having two winners face off in the first round of the finals. But beyond that, really happy with the format, and I think the smaller tweaks, and especially even on production side, once we're actually in a studio and not doing it online, would actually unlock a lot of potential for doing it. There's definitely room to take it forward, so I'm excited to see what we do in the future with it.
Speaking of the finals and about the seeding, one of the next questions I was going to ask if there was any information we can share about why the brackets were chosen the way they were and why we ran them in a randomized fashion as opposed to a seeded bracket. So I don't know if you have any more info, Swing.
Yeah, so this is kind of the explanation we were given by the person who built the brackets. Largely it's because every other part of the tournament was randomized. Like, we don't have a seeding or a ranking system in game, or elo system in game. It apparently made sense to randomize every aspect of the tournament, because if you can't, the logic was if you can't seed the regionals, there is the possibility in the very first round of the regionals that the best player might end up playing at second best player, just not formalised and seeding. So then you'd randomise every aspect of it. I think we and the rest of the player base disagree with that kind of logic. So we did try and give the players a choice beforehand. Realistically, we didn't give them enough of a choice, and because of the way it's stipulated in the terms and conditions, we needed kind of unanimous consensus on how we would change it, because competition law is a very real thing. So in the future, we'll definitely make sure to, if we go with a similar approach, seed the finals based on any kind of regional qualifiers.
Awesome. Back to the original question, how did it go for you and what did you think of it?
It was great. I was kind of delighted with how smoothly it went. Like Kieran said, an all online tournament and nothing going wrong is just pretty much unheard of. Like, viewership really strong, the participants really enjoyed it. There's participant Discord, lots of solid feedback, but overwhelmingly positive. There are things we should tweak in future, like gear and loadouts, maybe trying to involve more players and helping build what equipment and levels players will use. But ultimately, I'm really happy with how it went.
I guess the other thing to add is just, obviously, when you just mentioned gears and levels and stuff like that as well, the format and everything about this tournament was spun up incredibly fast. We all started working from home and we realized this is an opportunity, right? Let's give back to these charities and stuff, and give the players something that they can really engage with. And so the fact we managed to spin up a tournament in that time frame, that's also, I'm really happy to have seen that all just move forward so rapidly as well.
Yeah, I think to add that the players were really on our side during the tournament as well. Like part of my role within the tournament was to kind of corral the players in the right direction and let them know when their games were going to be starting, etc., and things like that. And they were all very receptive in going, okay, right, just let us know, do this, do that. There was a few questions that we had to repeat, but that's kind of expected when you're trying to organise that many players. But the fact that we managed to do that, and it was, I don't think we could have run it much smoother, if I'm going to be honest, in what we did with the time. So it's a huge testament to everyone that helped out, everyone that took part, and especially to our guest casters, Aiza, Perp, Abyss, and Foe, and Chris Archie, obviously hosting the final. Everyone put in a stellar job, and there's not a lot more we probably could have expected out of what is essentially our first time hosting something like that. Right, let's move on to the general questions. We have almost talked about these kind of things for the last half hour, so let's crack on. Do we have any more information about when Sins of the Father will be released into the game?
Early summer, it's what I'll say. I won't be any more specific than that right now. We have a date in mind that we're aiming for, but we won't share that until we're super confident in that. We hope to give you a bit more warning than what we did with the Nightmare launch, and we saw a lot of feedback from the fact that we left it too late to tell you all what the date was, and we don't want to put you all in that boat, because, you know, a lot of people do want to make sure they're off work and stuff for release dates and things like that.
Yeah, we've got certain milestones we need to hit in terms of content. You know, historically, we have really missed the deadlines we've given to players. Look at mobile, for instance. That was some way off the mark, and we really want to avoid that. I think what we're going to do is kind of aim for around like a 4-week notice period generally. I think that's probably a good amount of time for both hype and notice. The players can actually get themselves ready to play the content. It's coming along really nicely. Mod Ed. So we had a big old school sprint review yesterday where all the different teams shared the stuff they've been working on. Mod Ed walked us through the quest as it is. Looks incredible.
We ordered a big play test of the Hallowed Sepulchre like last week, I think, as well. Was it last week? I think so.
Yeah.
When you had a bunch of people from the old school team all trying to run through all the different traps and stuff in there for the first time. So, you know, things are going really well, and honestly, I'm impressed that development's been able to move along so well, given the fact we're now all separate at home.
Right. Another question is, have we seen a change in bots or reports since the new trade restrictions were put in place?
I don't have any data to hand. It'd be interesting to share. If you remember when we did some like big wave of integrity to anti-botting changes back in like 2017 and 2018, we followed it up with some graphs like highlighting the number of reports falling, that kind of stuff. Anecdotally, I think if you look at some of the more commonly botted items, I think I saw a Reddit thread about this as well, prices have increased and supply has dropped. So that's a good indicator that those measures are effective.
That's always good to hear. A while ago, Prif was said to have an achievement diary, but later got pulled from the poll block. Are there any plans to reintroduce a diary to the Prifdiness area?
Not right now. I mean, the topic honestly hasn't really come up in discussion, at least that I've heard of internally since, really. I think the feedback we received at the time, which was ultimately why we pulled it, just doesn't really warrant having another diary there. I mean, if we do get to that point, I'm totally open to it. I think diaries are really good content.
I think it's kind of a weird one though, since for the easy diary for Prifdiness, I think it'd be kind of strange since the quest has got such a high requirement to get into the city. So would the easy diary reflect that high requirement, or would it go backwards from that? That's a good point. That's a really good point. And I think the other problem is the Western diary sort of covers Taranwin right now. So it's sort of a weird divide, and almost you'd rather have the Elven lands, which is like Taranwin and Prifdiness. But even with that, it would still be quite a harsh level for easy after you've got to get through Underground Pass, etc. So,
well, you'll probably find out that you do all of that to get into Prifdiness, and then your first easy task is create a teak plank at the sawmill. Or something like that, which just completely doesn't make sense for the requirements
It's
that
strange.
you need.
Is there a precedent of us adding new tasks to Diaries following content release? Because, I mean, if we look at Darkmire and Sins of the Father coming out, I mean, there's going to be a hell of a lot of activity around Darkmire for players to do, like Hello Sepulchre.
I think that is something we've not done before, and I think we'd have to think very carefully about how we do it. We have taken, obviously, Quest Cape, perfect example, right? People unlock the Quest Cape, they lose it. You have to do it again. Diaries, obviously you do get the reward at the end of a diary, you do get the diary cape even at the end of all diaries. But you get your main, I mean, almost your main reward, but you get a chunk of XP and stuff at the end of completing a diary. How do you handle that almost going backwards? So if a new task comes out, say medium task in the Mauritania diary, what do you do to the player? Do you restrict them from using their Mauritania 1, 2, 3, 4 leggings? Is that the right way to go? Or do you just simply have a new task that they can do and all future players have to complete that one to get the reward in the first place? It's a difficult thing to just handle, because it's unlike the Quest Cape, which makes a lot more sense. I think there's a lot more attached to it that complicates that matter. But I do agree, it would be nice to be able to expand the Mauritania diary to include the new content that comes out. Likewise, it might be nice to add Prifdinus tasks to the Western diary rather than necessarily a full new diary. So, not easy. But
with the active ones, it might be possible, like you said, with the Mauritania legs, but then there's also some passive effects, right? So imagine if you're a hardcore Iron Man and you're doing your Zora every day until you use the revive, and then one day you log in and you don't have the revive. Like, that's a very scary thought, right? That you can't just take away this thing that someone assumes they'll have. Someone can use their account over that.
I've not really thought about it until this conversation just now about on this topic, but having heard what you just said, Arcane, and what I've been thinking is I think the only way to do it would actually not to be taking it off people. If you've unlocked the diaries once, you keep your rewards and you can continue to use them. I think that would be the way to go, but it's difficult because obviously you might have a new requirement that suddenly some players don't need to get. The
only requirement that changes for people is the one that actually requires the diary cape, or the quest cape rather. Because I think isn't one of the Lumbridge ones requires you to equip the quest cape in XYZ. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there is something like that.
It doesn't revoke that diary though, I don't think.
No, it doesn't.
So RS3, when RS3 have stuff like comp capes, they give like a little amnesty, for want of a better word, period. Do something similar to that. I almost regret asking the question now rather than pressing it. But I think it's
I think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
But I think the diary cape is easily one thing you could take away, right? The diary cape in of itself is one thing you could say you've got to complete all tasks to always have access to that.
We did that when Kebos came out with the Kebos area diary.
Oh, of course,
people. So there is precedent having done something like that before, but I do know that with the comp cape and even having some sort of amnesty, RuneScape players didn't necessarily like the fact that they were going to lose it if they didn't do it. I know that's a bit of a weird mindset to have, but it still created like a negative sentiment every time that more people were going to lose their comp cape if they hadn't done the tasks.
Perhaps the way to handle it. No, I agree. And having had comp cape back then as well, like, and new things come out, it is not necessarily a nice feeling. But maybe the way we do it is we add new tasks. We don't require you to do them at all. New players have to, but we're just conscious of what requirements we're adding. And we just pay attention to not push the boat too far that there's suddenly like a 95 runecrafting requirement on something that didn't have even 70 beforehand, right? So we're just, we'll push it gently rather than make a huge difference. I think that maybe then you're all right. I've also seen a lot of people in the chat talking about Master Diary. I've had that idea before, about not necessarily a Master Diary on every single diary, because I'm not sure a lot of things have the content to warrant it. A lot of the elite requirements already touch 90s and stuff like that. So what tasks can you be talking about at a master level? There's some in some regions, but I think I'd rather do one global master diary, which is like across like the Gillenor diary, so to speak, which has 10 tasks, which are more extreme, more difficult, and that has some additional reward that powers up all the other diary rewards or something like that. I think that is a way to do it.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think given that the diary cape isn't necessarily like powerful in terms of its effect, people who want to go get it back for the sake of completing it will go get those tasks if they lose it anyway, but perhaps just don't remove, as Arcane said, like the effects and stuff that people have had from the diaries already.
That's a nice response to the idea of a master global diary. So, you know, I've had the idea a few times, but I've never really spoken about it. So, you know, it's good to see that there's actually people interested in that. So maybe it's something we can explore.
Maybe you can flesh it out on our next ideation days.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got tons of topics in the backlog for that. It's quite exciting stuff. I think this topic can kind of like really spiral. So I was just thinking, like, what other things are kind of immortalized in cosmetic, like stuff like Champions Cape? Does that mean we'll never ever add new champions? Because if we keep adding new NPCs, it'd be pretty cool to add those kind of more grinds. If we ever add the completionist cape, does that mean people won't want to have like the stuff taken away from them? Since, I mean, we're 7 years old now, right? Old school. Probably start thinking about those kind of things and how.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I know the idea of like a completionist list as opposed to a cape, so you don't technically lose anything for doing it. You just get more and more stuff to do as time went on. That was kind of like something you can show off in your POH. And
I just don't think it will stay that way. When 99 capes, skill capes were first added, they were cosmetic only, and then gradually people wanted more bang for their buck. They're like, okay, can I have effect on my cape? Okay, can I have this and can I have this? Champion stuff, like the Champions Cape is a pretty new addition to the game, but not a week goes by where I don't see players asking for like a champion equivalent to the Max Cape or stats added to it. We can start as a list, then it becomes a cosmetic, and then players want effects added to the cosmetic. So
yeah,
I mean, that's just
I think that
expect it to stay like that.
I think that's kind of why personally I've always been against things like 120 capes and 200 mil capes, because if you put something there, people are going to want it. And if people are going to want it, they're going to want to get there quicker.
The other thing to add, by the way... Go on, Sween.
Okay, I was going to say, it's all well and good us adding something and then saying, this is it, we are not going to change it, we're not going to add anything else or give an effect. Because then if in a year or 2 years' time, there's overwhelming desire, like where we can't open a website without being told we're lazy and crap unless we add this, it's what the players want, then we're probably going to, relent and make some more changes. So even if we preface it with, it will start as a list, it's only going to stay as a list, there will be demand and we might have to react.
Yeah, and I was going to just say, I mean, it's all well and good when it is cosmetic, right? I think, the quest cape, it doesn't do that, it's not that useful for you. I mean, it has some stuff, but players are obviously already used to the concept that that's getting taken away. Something like the Champions Cape, yeah, cosmetic, probably not a big deal to take it away, but it also gets more and more complicated the more places you add it, right? Nowadays, things are on POH mounts and, you can display these things in so many different places. All of a sudden, even the act of saying, right, you lose access to this, becomes a much more difficult development task to say, right, now you haven't got it all of a sudden, do we need to take it off you? Do we delete the POH mount? Do we just not let you use it? Like, that question goes further and further, and it becomes more difficult to handle the situation. So, I'm always the more like champion scores. I think more champion scores is cool, more content is cool, and obviously players are going to want that. And maybe you just add a new tier reward. Maybe that's the way you go, and you say, all right, there's a new tier of Champions Cape with an additional gold trim down the outside. Maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's me. Let's move on to another topic. I have a question here that's saying, are the world hopping restrictions that we put in place a short while ago still there?
World hopping restrictions have been in place for a long time. It just so happened that we had to change them. So they're still in place and they still will remain in place. We're working on like a proper long-term solution that won't have any impact on normal legit players who are just trying to hop worlds and do stuff, but go about their business. We've relaxed the restrictions. It looks like most players are, looking at kind of sending out reports and volumes of reports on social media and the player support tickets as well, it's fallen back. So when we added the login restriction, there was a big spike in the amount of stuff we're seeing, the amount of contact we're getting. Since we've relaxed the restrictions, that number has dropped to normal levels. So that indicates that it was as it was, like what, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, before we put the revised restrictions in place. There are still restrictions in place, they're just not as harsh. So normal people shouldn't be affected by them.
Awesome. In regards to the upcoming death mechanics, will ornamented items created through ornament kits continue to be protected upon death? Now, I don't know if anyone's kind of like kept an eye on what Ash has been doing with the death stuff, but essentially, the idea is to keep things like that as they are now. So there's less impact to the player in terms of when they do come in. So I believe you probably have to double check this on the blog. I can't remember when we released the last news post about death system, but I believe they will stay as untradeable and go with you when you die, as opposed to splitting into their kits. Unless, of course, it's a PvP death in the wilderness where they would still act as they currently do now.
Well, I know we've got we're looking at having a section for death and mechanics and the rework in May's Yearling Gazette. So perhaps that's one of those questions we can seek to answer within that.
Yeah, perhaps if players can send in their questions, kind of have like a mini FAQ to drop into that section to answer a lot of the things that people are asking quite commonly. Right. We have, could we see some quality of life updates to the GE interface? A countdown timer on buy offers every 4 hours, a pause button on buy or sell offers that let us pause the offer itself to be able to adjust the prices of the offer that's already existing, or such things like that.
Difficult. The pause stuff, like editing offers and all that, I think is the number one thing the GE could do with, right? I think that's the number one quality of life, and I've seen it asked for years and years. But unfortunately, the concept of a paused offer doesn't exist through the stock market system. And so it's a significant piece of engine work to actually support that. So I think the way to go that is more accessible to us is sort of automating that process. So the automation of cancelling and recreating an offer, which, gives you the same sort of benefit. And that's maybe the way we can go. And we try to do a little bit of that by adding last searched, right? It's made that a little bit easier than typing it in again. So, but even that's not a trivial task due to the way the G works. But I'd definitely love to do that. As for the 4 hour limits, currently in the content side, we don't have access to that information. I think RuneScape got access to what the limits are, so they can display on the screen what the limit is. I don't know if they have access to, sort of your progress towards that limit, or how long until you are free again. I think it would be really helpful though, because it is a very confusing moment when you're trying to buy, say, 14,000 skilling supplies, and it stops at 13,000, and you're like, why? Am I not paying enough? And your natural reaction is to try and up your offer, and it doesn't work. That's not really told to the player. On one hand, also, maybe we've got our limits wrong, right? Maybe that is also a problem as well, in the fact that, okay, you're hitting your limits that easily, maybe it's too low, but I think there's a couple of things we can approach.
Like commonly used items like fire runes, etc. When you've got a limit of 13k, you'll often find that people want to buy things like that or feathers in quite extreme values, like 100,000, 200,000, in order to train and things like that.
100%. And fire runes are in huge supply, so there's no real reason, I think, for it to be quite that low. Another example is like mahogany planks. You use them faster than you can buy them from the GE, right? If you create construction efficiently and effectively, you're going to use up those planks faster than that 13,000 come through the GE every 4 hours. So I think those are things we can target to try and improve that. But yeah, I mean, some of this is engine work, and I'm not going to bet on getting that stuff soon when we're trying to get clans and Group Iron Man and things like that developed. There's other things like HiScores and that sort of stuff that's going to be needed for Group Iron Man and for clans. So these are big tasks, and every little thing like this, which I think this is actually probably a little bit more significant, would obviously slow that stuff down.
Awesome. I'm going to jump to a couple of questions in the chat before carrying on. There's a few more extra questions that have come in as a result of discussing about the Dead Man, such as, are the Tier 5 emblems and supply shops still going to exist, like the Bounty Hunter shop that was repurposed to be able to buy Persians in Dead Man? From what I understand, I believe we're keeping it, like if it existed before, we want to kind of keep it existing in now. And if it has changed, we've mentioned it in the blog. If it hasn't, then it should work as it did beforehand.
I mean, we had this discussion, didn't we, Kira, you, me, and Modlenny. Plan was for that to be the case. If it's not, I need to revisit the blog. If it's not mentioned, then we'll make sure we'll edit it and stipulate that how it is going to be.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much going to be my answer. If there are any Dead Man questions, and I probably scroll down, we'll clarify, and we'll answer and clarify in the blog. We'll edit.
Yeah, I've got a few more questions that we kind of answered early on as well. Is there going to be an XP cap in the Dead Man mode in the DMM tournament? No, there isn't. We have completely removed that for this one. I think we've got a couple more questions that aren't about Dead Man. VH Rock God asks, can the Inquisitor set, which recently got an update, also get a bonus added to the mace?
What bonus?
It doesn't specifically state what bonus. It just says, can you include the mace and get an additional bonus on top of what already exists?
I mean, Beta just updated it, and I think it was. I mean, arguably it didn't need the bonus anyway. It's a pretty good set piece still holding value, retaining it. Let's just let it alone for a little bit.
I do feel that there was a lot of people that kind of didn't understand the niches and what it was originally created for, and because things like Bandos existed, they were like, oh, okay, if Bandos already exists, why have we got this? Even though it's best in slot for a different attack type. Like, oh, then clearly it needs to be better because it's exactly the same as Bandos, when it isn't. So I'll be a little bit hesitant into increasing that further. It has its niches. It's a set of armor that's pretty useful for the boss you get it from, along with a few other situations as well. So I'd be a bit questionable if we were to add even more to something that has arguably already has its place in the game.
I think it's a good idea to wait it out for a bit, see how it goes. Something we could do in the future if we think it's necessary.
Generally, I'm not a massive fan of polling stuff like new equipment. Yeah, on the very first one, like back when we polled Rewards from the Nightmare, and then within 2 months, just carry on incrementally increasing it. Because my question then is, would this have passed the poll in the first line?
Yeah, would a 2.5% bonus gone through the polls originally? I'd argue that it's like a small enough bonus to not make too much of a difference. But if we'd have introduced it back then, people would have gone, oh my god, people could have gone, oh my god, 2.5%, that's absolutely too much. And perhaps wanted a nerf version of it. It is very kind of like flip-flop on those kind of things, depending on when you ask those kind of questions.
I think there's more we can do when we poll stuff for new updates, new rewards, which is providing comparisons. I mean, we've got access to the items in game. We can easily record ourselves killing stuff, having side-by-side comparisons like this is generally how long it's probably going to take. This is the impact it's going to have on the rest of the game. Maybe working with people who work on things like the DPS calculators, that kind of thing. Just be a bit more open about what's coming into the game. Perhaps we need to buff it then, perhaps we need to nerf it then. That should hopefully, well, in theory, maybe that would quieten the whole, it's been a month or 2 months since you added this item, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I think we did do something like that for Chambers of Xeric. I distinctly remember Ronan heading to Bandos on stream with his Twisted Bow to cause a bit of a ruckus when people realised it could do high damage at Bandos. So yeah, maybe that's something we can perhaps work with either specific content creators or with ourselves to create our own videos of comparison.
I think some sort of clarification on how rare an item is, or maybe expected to be able to get, is useful as well, since an item might look better on paper, but it's so unavailable because of the rarity and how expensive it is that might skew people's opinions of it. So obviously, if we just release something that's it's the same as Bandos but better, but then only very, very few people have it, Bandos still has a very big spot to fill, right? It's so much more available. Not to say we should power creep in any sense directly like that, but it is something to take into consideration how rare it is.
Right, now let's move on. I have a slight question about mobile here. On desktop clients, you can hover over the XP counter in order to see how much XP you have and how much you have remaining. On mobile devices, you can't hover over it, but you have to select it instead. After selecting the bar, it does not update the XP values to the successful XP gain. Is there any chance we could perhaps modify the system to be a bit more user-friendly? I think, and at the same time probably fix the bug that currently exists in there.
Which are they talking about? The XP thing at the top, the XP counter,
Yeah,
or
the XP counter at the top that you can
not the stats
customize
interface itself?
No.
I'm unsure why it wouldn't update, but that would take an investigation to try and find out why. As for a redesign, that would, again, it's going to take some thought to really think about how that UI should look and what functions it should have, because tooltips don't lend themselves that well to mobile, and the fact even tapping on the stats to show the XP remaining to the next level isn't ideal either. But there's no easy way to come up with a quick solution to that. It needs some thought, because without a change to that whole stats interface, that's going to be proving difficult.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we had difficulty when we were releasing mobile originally was that hover over doesn't exist on a mobile because you have to interact with the screen to be able to do something like that. So it's very hard to kind of like organizing how we want the interfaces to work in order to still provide the same information that players are used to or would expect, but in a completely new way.
I think there's lots to do as well. I mean, just because mobile's out doesn't mean there's not lots of problems still with some interactions around the game. I think we changed the chat box recently, so that was a bit easier not to misclick on, which was very easy if you had it open before. Little things like that can make the experience a lot easier. I think another example that's still, I find it quite difficult, I know I've seen it mentioned quite a lot, is even the general choice interfaces where you have like up to 5 options. That's quite difficult because the text is quite narrow, especially when you're up to 5 options. That it's hard to be very confident about what you're pressing on. Ultimately, to change that, we're not going to be able to put it in the chat box, I reckon. Not at least without doing something wildly different. So these things take a bit of a deeper look to fix, if you know what I mean. And they're not necessarily quick either, especially with something that's used across the entire game like that.
That's fair enough. Would you consider disabling the boss HiScores to allow the stat HiScores to work as they did previously before the boss HiScores were implemented? I think people would rather have the stat HiScores than having both of them that arguably don't work properly.
So HiScores has been an ongoing issue for obviously pretty much since boss HiScores came out. And that was investigated since then, since issues started really becoming prevalent. A number of changes have already been made to the HiScores. There was some investigation attempts to try and reduce the load on the HiScores. Now, the boss HiScores, there was a change made to the HiScores that would clear off the bottom people in the HiScores if we upped the minimum requirement. So, we made the minimum requirement to get onto boss HiScores much more difficult. And that broadly addressed the issue. And then we had a crap ton more players come and play old school because of coronavirus, which, whether it's boss HiScores or not, it probably shouldn't be causing this level of an issue. The HiScores are under load, and the HiScore system in of itself is old. We're looking at it. It's being discussed especially as of the last few days, because we know over the weekend it really did become a problem. But I'm well open to getting rid of boss HiScores if that's what it takes. But this is probably more to do with the huge amounts of traffic, the fact we're hitting 150,000 concurrents online, and when you log out, obviously it updates the HiScores, and The more people online, the more people logging out. So that sort of thing contributes. But it's being looked at. We're discussing these things and seeing what we can do.
Awesome. I've got a couple of questions here that I can get a bit quicker answers, because I know we've had quite a lot of discussion topics today. Probably a bit more than we would normally have on the Q&A. With the new Graceful colours, can we now make it each colour a one-time payment so that we can use one set of Graceful and switch between the colours when we want to?
Isn't the appeal of getting all of the Graceful to have it all in your bank, and you just have this big spread of all the Gracefuls that you have? Just so satisfying to look at.
You have enough space in your bank to hold all the Graceful sets?
There's always space, dude. Make space.
Rock just casually admitting that his bank's a mess.
No, I put them in my PO8 so I don't have to have them in my bank. I think for me, kind of modifying how that works and only requiring you to have one set of Graceful in the end kind of detracts away from the point of having all of the Graceful sets. Like, if you want them to collect them, then be my guest. If you don't want to have all the different sets, then that's entirely up to you. It's one of those things that gives an ongoing cost for the Marks of Grace that isn't something than just providing the people training it a pure GP benefit. It's like kind of one of those things that you decide what you want with it.
Yeah,
I see a lot of people in chat complaining about bank space. So in my clan, we've been having these like Discord streams where we watch each other like scroll through the bank, and we're just basically trying to figure out like, you do not need this, you do not need this, you can get this again. I'm basically trying to like prove you're a hoarder, right? And it's been really, really effective. It's extremely satisfying, and you end up like deleting like 300 things out your bank you thought you needed, right? Everyone's secretly a hoarder.
This is going to be a new thing on Reddit. It's just like, rate my bank. How much of a hoarder am I?
It's
and
so
just
fun.
calling people out for how awful their bank is.
We've been doing it. We had one guy in our clan that just joined, and we did it for him. And he was on like 699 spaces, and we got him down to 200. He had so much stuff in there that he didn't need.
But are you one of these people like me that likes to have like a 4-dose, a 3-dose, a 2-dose, and a 1-dose?
I do
all
still
lined up next to each other, so it
It's
all
so
looks nice and it fits perfectly, and style over substance.
For what it's worth,
do
I mean, obviously, bank space is still probably a concern. It's more of a concern for Iron Men, right? Who obviously no one wants to have to go and get something back if it takes 10 minutes to go and run somewhere. But there absolutely is the point that it's not fun tidying a bank, right? And people want to play content. They don't want to sit there and drag items around their bank all day.
It's very therapeutic.
Especially when it's someone else's bank and you can complain about theirs.
Oh, that's got a mixed response. Some people do find it fun. Some people don't. But you don't play this game
There's
for
our new
bank
skill, guys.
for the most part. Now, I would look for solutions that what's in your bank, what's taking up a ton of space, and what alternatives have we got? What could we pull out of the bank? I'd love to give you more bank space. I'd love to just up the number tomorrow. But it's a tech problem with having to try and display so many items at once on screen that runs into limitations, and it's already close. It's already sometimes has problems now if you have the right combinations. So it's things like hidey holes, right, which allowed you to take all your clue scrolls all your clue items out of your bank and store them at the clue location. More POH things that allow you to store like your seeds in the farming guild. Opportunities like that, give us a shout, because those can really help, for sure.
I was hoping that answer would be kind of quicker, and we've just divulged into it like everything else. Unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. Maybe a yes/no answer right here then. Can we get a custom teleport animation for the Drakan's Medallion, especially if, according to the recent blog, it will be receiving more teleports with Sins of the Farmer?
That'd be cool.
I like it.
Okay. Simple. Right. I have realised we've pretty much come to the end of the stream, so just a couple of things. If you type !DMM in the chat, you'll be able to get a link to the dev blog that was posted about an hour ago now. If you type ! questions, you'll be taken to a link where you can fill in a form to submit questions for future Q&As. And if you're unsure who Mod Arcane is, then type !new mod, and you'll be able to find a bit more extra information about this. So, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in. Thank you everyone for joining on the Modcast, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.